Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, or good after midnight, whatever time you're watching this video. Welcome to another episode of Greg Blends. And in today's episode, I'm going to start a new series where I try to model famous movie props. And I think that would be fun because you kind of get to examine some of the props that are in the most iconic movies that we've enjoyed. I'm probably going to do mostly nostalgic movies from my childhood, but we'll see. Maybe if you guys have suggestions for movie or TV props to research and try to recreate, I might do that. Of course, you guys have been killing it with the comments, so here are a select choice of the most recent comments, and make sure to comment below, and you may be featured in a future video. So, without further ado, let's get started. I have some various reference photos that I've collected. Now, this one, the author that posted this image said that this was from an eBay listing, and this was a real prop from the movie. I'm not sure, I guess it would be the second movie is when they kind of introduced the ooze. I'm not sure if the canisters are in the first one, but looks like this is an incomplete one because it doesn't say TGRI here. And so it's going to be a pretty simple build. I mean, this is a glass tube with some green stuff in it, a metallic looking sticker that has the TGRI letters, and then this kind of end cap that has these cuts out of it. So nothing too challenging there. I am going to put the crack in there. And kind of like this scene, I'm going to have the ooze leaking out. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be modeling all the turtles today, but I will experiment with volumetrics. Now, I'm not an expert on volumetrics, so I'll just try throwing them in there and seeing what happens. But my main goal is just to get the prop made. And then I also have this one as well, which I'm not sure if this is an actual movie prop. It looks a little bit different from this one because the seam isn't there. But then again, both these people could be completely lying and these could be homemade props that they made in their basement. So I'm not going to worry about it too hard, but I'm going to try to get this made. So without further ado, let's get started. All right, let's jump in here and try to make that. So I'm going to add a circle. And before I do anything, I'm going to go down to this menu and put in 30. And you'll see why we want to do that in a second, but it's important we do that right away before we do any editing on the circle, because this menu will go away. And I am going to turn on screencast keys, but this isn't really a tutorial. I think my style on YouTube is going to basically be kind of making things and explaining everything I'm doing as I go along. But it's not going to be like a step-by-step, then do this, then do this, then do this. Of course, because I'm explaining everything as I go, you can follow this as if it was a tutorial. So I'm going to go into front view, rotate this, and then go into edit mode. And what we want to do is kind of figure out the size that we need to do. And I already did a little example here, but I'll do it again for you guys on camera. I'm going to use this tool, the polygonal lasso tool, to cut a sample here and then duplicate it, and then use that to measure the distance of this opening. Now, technically, there's a little bit of distortion on this photo because like the far side of the tube is a little bit smaller than what's closer to the camera, but this is all roughly pretty much the same distance from the camera, so it won't matter a whole heck of a lot for what we're trying to do here. So what it looks like, let's take all of these and merge them and put it something like there. So what it looks like is you have this length, and then it's about 2 1/3 the width of this, or sorry, 3 1/3 times the width of that, and then another 2/3 over here. And you can see that this side looks a little bit shorter than this whole side because you have this ridge in there and it just appears longer. So just to make the math easy, right now the scale doesn't matter a whole heck of a lot. So I'm just going to extrude this to, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll do 6. And then we'll do another 6, and then another 6, and then another 6. And I could have actually just done the math, but I feel like this is easier. So, and then we have 1/3 and then the remaining 2/3. Now, what that means is we can go into edge mode, select all of these, and dissolve edges. And now we have the correct shape, but these faces are roughly the size that the holes should be. So now I'm going to go into face mode and just do this, skip 3. So those two, skip 3, skip 3, skip 3, skip 3, and then there's 3 remaining. So the reason why we made that circle 30 vertices was so that we could have an even number of faces to select and have them spaced evenly. If it was the default 32, it wouldn't have worked out as nicely. We would have ended up with just one face between. So let's go ahead and delete these faces. And because I hate the faceted look, I'm going to shade smooth right now. Now the next thing we want to do is select all of these. I'm using Alt and Shift to select those. All right, we're going to go to Side View. We're going to Extrude, but then Escape to cancel immediately. But now they're still selected, so now we can do Scale Shift X, and that will allow us to scale in. At first, I only want to go just a little bit because we're going to put a subdivision surface on here afterwards. Then I'm going to extrude again, Scale, Escape, Scale Shift X, bring them into about here. All right, then we're going to extrude again, hit Escape, Scale Shift X, bring them in just a little bit again like that. Then we're going to extrude yet again. And this time we're going to scale Shift X without moving them. Or actually, no, we're going to go into individual origins, scale Shift X, and make them a little bit wider like that. So you can see they came out, they're going like wide. Then back in front view, wireframe on, we're going to scale just on X. Maybe a little bit bigger, something like that. All right, so what we should have is this shape. There we go. Where we have these little insets, and then there's kind of like a flange coming out off them. And you'll see why we did that in a second. I'm going to scale this in. Actually, I'll do both of these at the same time. So let's delete those vertices, get this other side, go into this view, extrude, escape, scale Shift X. We'll do just a little bit to start with. Extrude, escape, scale Shift X, bring it into about there. Extrude, escape, scale Shift X. And actually for this one, I don't need these ones anymore. We're just going to do this one. And then we can Control G to, or Control F, grid fill, and fill that in. All right, and now we can put on our subdivision surface, and we're almost done here. So we'll bump it up in the viewport a couple times, and we'll take this edge, extrude it in maybe that far, and we don't want it to round these too much, so we'll put in some edge loops here. And that's looking good. So now we just have to focus on getting these cutouts to look correct. So I'm just going to put in, let's see, probably 2 extra edge loops all the way around. So I'm just hitting Control R, 2 on the number row, and then clicking, and then right click to escape or hit the escape key. And there we go. And so that makes these nice and round. But one thing that you'll notice is that this is way too long. Now, we measured that this was, 1 unit, and then this was 3 1/3 units, and this was only 2/3 units. But we didn't measure the width. And so I'm just going to select everything and then scale Shift X. Oops, there we go. And just bring this up until it looks a little bit better. And I think that looks pretty good. So now what I want to do is work on these corners, which I'm not completely happy with right now. So I'm going to go into side view and then just kind of rotate it just with the mouse. This might not be the best way, but it seems like it should work. I'm going to hide these edges for now because we don't want to deal with them. And I just want to select all of these corners. And if we rotate it, we should be able to find a place where they overlap so we can get both sides at once, like you can see I'm doing here. All right, and I think that's it. We now have all of those corners correctly selected. So right now they look a little bit flat on this side, so I'm just going to scale them in on X. Oh, we should go back to median point, scale X. And we can just do that until they're nice and rounded, like we see in the prop. Of course, that did kind of pull them in towards the center, so I'm just going to turn on X-ray mode and bring this out like a notch, and maybe on this side the same thing. And since I did that, I probably also want to do that with the center guys as well. Oops, should deselect those. All right, I like how that's looking. So let's, I'm going to include this little detail here, even though, let's see. Well, you can't really see it in this, and this is actually from the movie. This one doesn't have it. This one doesn't have it. So you know what? Even though this one claimed to be a movie prop, because, you know, that little line isn't in actually any of the photos from the movie, I'm going to not include it. I was going to include it. I think I included it in my practice render, but you know what? It doesn't really seem to be there, so I'm not going to do it. Now, it's always good practice to name your things, so we'll call this end cap, and we'll go create a material for this. So let's make this C3, C3, C3. I already did a little bit of practice, so I kind of know the numbers that I want to do. This is going to be very metallic. And you know what? Let's actually just bring up a shader editor here. So this shouldn't be too rough. And then I want to give it some detail. Now, we didn't UV unwrap this, but one thing that I'm really kind of addicted to in Blender is using pre-made texture coordinates. So I'm going to get this guy. Then I'm going to get a noise texture. And then we'll just take the object generated UVs and put it into that noise texture. So if we go to material preview here, you can see it already does a really good job of unwrapping this noise texture evenly along the surface without having to do any UV editing. Now, obviously, if you wanted to export this to a game engine, you'd have to do UV editing, but here we're just doing a render. So using this pre-made UV unwrapping is perfectly fine, and I really like it. Let's make it a little bit more noisy, and then we want to get a bump map and take the factor and put it into the height of the bump map, put that into normal, and I've found that 0.608 with a distance of 0.1 looks pretty nice. We'll also put this into the base color, and let's see how that looks. There we go. So the noise not only colors the surface, but it gives it a little bit of texture. Now, I feel like this could actually come down a bit. Now, one thing I'm not really certain about is when to use strength versus distance. I've seen people go either way, and to be honest, I'm not really sure which the right way is, so I always just kind of play with both until I have something I'm happy with. Now, I feel like this is probably a little bit too bright. So what I'm going to do is make a color ramp, put that in there. And then I'm just going to bring, yeah, see, I like that for the metal a little bit better. Maybe even bring a little bit of brown into it. Just a little bit. I like that a lot. All right, so now we need to make the glass tube. And because we already have this object, I'm just going to go back to solid mode. We can just take this ring of vertices, go into front view, duplicate it, hold control so it kind of snaps. And then I'm going to hit parent to separate by selection. And now we have a ring with the perfect diameter. So I'm going to go into here, grab it all the way inside there. And then now we need to figure out how long to make this. So let's look at another movie reference. All right, and I'm going to redo that same thing we did before. So I'm going to grab this guy, duplicate it, and 1, 2. So basically it looks like 2 1/4 is the size that we want of the whole cap. So this is like totally kind of, you know, hackish way of measuring things, but I think it'll do. So it looks like one of these is exactly 3 units. So yeah, we'll just kind of eyeball it, but all right, let's take, can I select my ring here, please? All right, so I'm going to extrude it till it's right about here. So this would be 2, and then 1/4 would be, actually I'll just grab it further, right about there, and then we'll just extrude again. We can delete these guys. Duplicate this cap. Select everything, mirror on the x-axis. And let's see. Actually, I'm going to delete these vertices for now. So I know that goes right there, and then bring those all the way back. And why is there so much Z fighting going on here? Oh, what the heck? Did I merge the glass tube into here? What is going on? I'm just going to delete that one, because this one doesn't have that issue. Let's just duplicate this guy. Now I have to redo this bit, but whatever. Made some mistake there. If you could figure out what I did, leave it in the comments. There we go. That looks much better. So this one, I guess we'll name this one in cap left, right, in cap right. And because we copied this from the in cap, this one became named that, but we'll call this glass tube. All right, and now let's go give this glass tube material. I'm just going to remove that one, create a new one, call this glass tube. And let's see, I kind of want this to be a little bit darker gray. It shouldn't have any roughness really, because glass is pretty shiny. Transmission, we should turn all the way up. And then I want to give this also a bump map. So let's just go over to our other material. Copy these nodes. Now, one thing I found is that for some reason in the node editor, doing Control-C is supposed to copy nodes, but it doesn't always do it. So sometimes you have to do it a few times. So I always just spam it to make sure that they get copied. I don't know if that's been fixed or not, but it's kind of an annoying thing. All right, so let's put this into the normal. There we go. And let's see, I probably want this to be 0.692 and 0.05 is probably fine. Make the scale a little bit smaller. And again, these were numbers that I practiced with earlier. So let's go set up our scene and test it out. So for the background, I used an HDRI image. Let me check which one I used. So basic 2K02. I use this nighttime one. Let's go set that up. Environment to texture. Open. Now, you won't have these. You can use any HDRIs that you find online. These were ones that my friend gave me a long time ago. And for some reason, my Arduino folder started taking over this folder. You can see some of my Arduino codes in there. So I don't know where these came from. I just know that my friend gave them to me, and I've had them for years. But anyways, let's open that up and make it a little bit stronger. And then I want to render using cycles and with the GPU. So let's see what we're looking at so far. Oh, wait, rendered. Okay, I like that so far. We have to put the ooze in it. We have to build a floor. And then, well, we have to crack it. Oh, I guess the next thing we should do is the TGRI texture. But yeah, I like how that's coming out so far. All right, so carrying on. The next thing is the TGRI texture, which we want to put on the glass here. So I'm going to put this edge loop kind of where we want the glass to be broken. And then I'm just going to grab some of these on X, just so we can create our break effect. I guess I'll make that one go. All right, that looks pretty good. I'm going to want to tighten that for a later step, but that looks good for now. So now I'm going to go into face mode, and I'm just going to select the faces where we want our TGRI texture to be, which that looks good to me. And then we can rotate this later on to frame it a little bit better. But so now we're going to create a new material. We'll call this one TGRI. Now what I've done is I have prepared a texture here, which I basically found online. So we'll use that for our material. All right, and so let's go and get our texture, image texture. Go grab that TGRI. We're going to use UV projection for this. So let's go get our UV editor with TGRI open. And what I'm going to do is just with these faces selected now, if the camera's rotated like this and you do, whoops, you project from view bounds, it'll do this weird distortion thing. But if you just press 1 on the keyboard and look at it straight on and do project from view bounds, it'll stretch these faces over the texture perfectly. So let's look at the reference, and it looks like it's a little bit in the center. It doesn't go quite to the edges. So what I actually want to do is, let's put another edge loop here. Now they're going to be all weird because we already put the where we're going to break it. So what I want to do is just select this, scale X 0, and then I'll make it straight. Scale X 0. And we want to put these where the TGRI logo is going to be. So I'm just going to slide it all the way to the left and then grab it with Control and just move it 1 tick in. Slide it all the way to the left, grab it, move it 1 tick in, and now I know they're equally distanced from each other. So now I can scale with both of them on X to make sure we stay centered. And I think that will be good. So the T will start there and the I will end there for the T. Maybe a little bit, something like that. All right. So let's go select our TGRI material. And that's a cool trick that a lot of people don't know. If you deselect everything here and you hit select glass, it'll select all the faces that have the glass material. If you go to this material and hit select, it'll select all the faces that have that material. And that's a really handy trick. So now that we have these extra lines in here, I'm going to do an unwrap project from view bounds again. And now in the UV editor, I want to scale it so that the T and the I are right there. So let's see how this looks in material preview mode. Oh, it would help if we put this into base color. And what else is, oh, right. So this is a alpha image. And what we want to do, because I have this image that I guess found online and it has an alpha background, let's create a color mix node. And we're going to make 2 colors. One color is going to be basically the metal texture. I'll leave it like that. And then one's going to be the TGRI logo texture. We'll make it a dark gray because I don't think it's fully... Can I find a better picture of it? It's pretty close to black, but it's not fully black. So let's just make it a little bit darker here. And then we'll use the alpha channel to control that factor. And then we should get... There we go. So that looks pretty good. I'm going to select these UVs and just move them left a bit. And now you notice a problem. There's an I and an extra T. Well, that's really easy to fix. So what we can do is just select these faces. Whoops, gotta go into face mode. All right, and we can just scale them down and put them somewhere where there's no texture. And they can overlap. It doesn't really matter because for this part of the material, it doesn't matter at all. Because it's just a solid color where those are, right? So we have the alpha, so where it's checkered here, is going to be this light color, and it's just a solid color. It doesn't affect anything else. So that'll be fine. But it looks like our logo is kind of screwed up, so let's take those faces. I don't remember when that happened, but let's just reproject this from view. And it is still messing up. Well, let's put in some extra edge loops, and that actually tightened it up nicely. All right, didn't have to do much. The reason why is because when you have faces that are really long and stretched, the texture has to stretch a lot, so these extra edge loops will help. And we could probably actually do that, and then down here say, actually, what is it? well, yeah, let's just... This is why this is not a tutorial. This is just me making something, because if this was a tutorial, I'm sure I would have lost people at this point. So I'm just, I want these to be a little bit straighter. So what I'm doing is sliding them down towards the straight edge and then bringing them in. Of course, that destroyed our logo. So now I can go back in here. Oh, I have to go to face mode. And, whoops, reproject these. There we go. Okay. Now, we want to add some more bump stuff to here. And again, I'm going to select these, copy a million times so that it actually remembers what copy. Now, you see that? It didn't do it. I was trying to copy these three, which are straight in a row, and you saw me spam the copy, but then it pasted the old ones. I don't know why Blender has such a difficult time. Like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can we paste these now? It still pastes the wrong ones. I don't think it's just, let's see, maybe it, yeah, see, look, this one has a different value. I don't understand. Copy, paste, there we go. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. I don't understand why I can't ever get the nodes to copy correctly here. But now see, for this one, if we go to input and choose UV map, the TGRI logo is coming from the UVs that we unlaid or unwrapped. But the noise is going to come from a object generated texture coordinate. So we're going to go into here, and I think this is fine. The strength we'll do a little bit less. And what other settings do we want? So this is kind of like a metallic label, so we'll dial that up. The roughness should probably be a little bit less. This should go in shade smooth. And there we go. So now we have that textured surface that goes over the letters, as well as the gray metallic area. And I kind of want to bring this down just a little bit. Perfect. But, even though our UVs, the way we unwrapped them, like for these guys, right? Whoops. We'll just get everything, I guess. They're just randomly chilling, overlapping here, but it doesn't matter at all, because the only thing our UV unwrap is controlling is the color, and this is just a solid color. So there won't be any weird artifacts or anything like that. And then the bump map is using the generated UVs, which we didn't have to do ourselves, and it looks perfectly even all the way across the surface. All right, so we have our label now. So the next thing we want to make is the ooze that's inside of it. Now, I guess let's make our floor real quick and also do just a little bit of housekeeping. So for this object, I want to select everything and say, I guess, actually, no, we'll just right click, set origin to geometry, so it's right there in the center. Then I'm going to take these two end caps. I'm going to parent them to this, keep transform. Then with the glass selected, we can now move everything. I'm going to put this at the center of the screen. And then I'm just going to move it up a couple clicks. Actually, probably just by hand, until it's resting on that red line there. Because we're going to create a floor plane eventually. But let's create the ooze now. So I'm going to go back into edit mode on this. We're going to take one of these edge loops. Oops. Duplicate it, hit escape, press P to parent selection or separate by selection. Now we have another circle that we can extrude into the ooze. So I'm going to hide the end caps for now just by pressing H there. Select this side view, and we want to scale it in just a little bit. And then grab it, go into vertex mode, and I'm going to do basically like this, because we're going to have the ooze leaking out. So I want some extra geometry right here in the middle that we can use to make that leak. And I'm probably even going to insert another couple edge loops there, maybe even a couple more. So if you look, we have edge loops like that. And because it's leaking out, I'm going to go into proportional editing mode. Let's add a couple extra edge loops here. I'm going to go into proportional editing mode, select these ones. So proportional editing mode right here. And I guess we'll do connected only. And I'm going to drag this down, something like that, so it looks like it's emptying out. And later on, we might put a light source there to try to create the light coming out. But for now, that looks fine. So let's go create our ooze material. So we have the ooze selected. Let's name that. And remove both these materials, create a new one. And OCD says, should do that. Now for this ooze material, we're actually not going to use the principled BSDF. And oh, by the way, one thing I like to do is, let's see, so TGRI end caps. Let's go into solid mode without wireframe. You can bring the end caps back. So these guys, I want to have, where's it? Viewport display. I hate how that one's collapsed by default. These should be dark gray with a little bit of brown in them. The glass should be, viewport color should be pure white. The TGRI logo, viewport color should be darker gray. I like using the viewport color thing so you could see what you're working on. And then if we hide the glass, let's shade smooth the ooze. This should have a viewport display of some green color. All right, so let's unhide everything. Go back to what we were doing. I guess actually we can leave stuff visible for now. Do I have everything there? Yeah, okay. Stop. So we want to select the ooze, and what we're going to use is an emission node. And I'm going to go grab the color I like here. And then we're going to use a glass node. And the reason why is, okay, so maybe I'm wrong about this. I might be wrong, and if you guys can correct me in the comments, but if we use a principled BSDF, this is kind of like supposed to be the end-all shader for Blender. Like, you just always use this shader and everything just always works. And it has emission on it. So we could, for example, use this emission, and that's the cool thing. I don't know if you know you can do that, but you can drag and drop colors in Blender. So we could use this as the emission, but the emission node has a strength for the emission. Whereas the principled BSDF, there is no strength for its emission. It's just either emission or not. Now you can control the strength by making it darker or brighter, but you can actually go beyond bright with this. So I could put in 100, which would make this a very bright material. And I don't see any way to do that with the principled BSDF. So we're not going to use that. And instead, we're going to use a mix shader. And you might say, well, isn't 100 an insanely high value? Yes, but we're going to make it almost invisible because this is going to be 0.975. And then we'll put that to there. So let's hide our glass tube real quick. And you can see, yes, it's very bright, but also, you know, if we were to make it like this, it'd be much brighter. But because this was so far to the right, not too much comes through, if that makes sense. Now, this will look better in the final render. Right now it looks kind of weird, but you'll see what happens later. So anyways, yeah, we're just using an emission and then a glass to make it look kind of oozy. All right. So now what we want to do is break our glass and, let's bring that back, make the ooze kind of pouring out. And then rotate it a little bit so that there's like a crack there, right? Okay, let's go into solid mode. I'm going to just move this aside for now. And with this inner crack edge loop selected, I'm going to hit V, which rips those faces. And so now they're like two different pieces. Then I can hit L on this side, which selects that whole half, and hit P to separate selection. So now we want to adjust our parents. I'm going to hit Alt-P, clear parent. Oops. Clear parent, keep transform. Same thing with this one. And then I'm going to parent it just to this half. So Control-P, keep transform, and then this one will be parented to just this half. And so now if we move this half or this half, whoops, the caps go with them. And then we want to rotate everything around this 3D cursor right here. So I'm going to go into top view. I'm going to grab this one and go like one click to the left. Same thing with this one click to the right. I'm going to take this one and rotate just like maybe one there, and then take this one and rotate one there. And you can see our ooze is breaking. So now we can take everything to the left of center, go one to the right, or turn off proportional editing, one to the right, and then we want to do around the 3D cursor. Then take everything here. All right, and so our ooze is back inside the tubes, but now we have this nice little crack here. So for the ooze to come out, like it's pouring out, I'm not really going to pay attention too much to the crack because it's going to be pretty overwhelming, like the effect. So I'm just going to kind of take some of these faces. Doesn't really matter too much to me. If I'm going to do that, I also want to go all the way down. So I want to get it's like, why does this look different from what I was expecting? I want to do like that. So maybe less of those. All right, there we go. So I'm going to extrude on Y. So it looks like that, and that looks a little bit better. I'm going to rotate it like this, and then scale out on X, scale on Z, and then we can just fix up some of these things. So let's get proportional editing on. What is going on? Oh, I'm selecting far too much. Let's bring the puddle out a little bit. Turn on my proportional again. Let's put an extra couple edge loops here. And I just want it to look like it's really seeping underneath the bottle. So this way we kind of have this like, it's pouring out. It's a little bit raised higher here. We can probably bring a lot of this up actually. Let's turn off proportional for a second. These ones are getting kind of flattened, so let's bring those guys up. There we go. And this I'm not really doing from reference. I mean, I'm not trying to create like this puddle exactly, but it looks like it goes a little bit more out in the front there, a little bit wider on this side. So we can do that, but I'm not trying to really particularly go for anything in general with this kind of I don't know what you'd even call this. It's not a sculpt, but let's put another edge loop in here and then bring these guys out a bit. And then this one, so what is it? Shear, there we go. I accidentally brought these up when I was using a weird camera angle. That's one thing I don't like about extrude, is that it tries to extrude along the normal. Actually, I think that was the problem. All right, and then I'm just going to go into face mode, and I'm just going to go and get pretty much all the faces along the bottom here. I think I got some extras on the sides. All right, that looks good. And then I'm just going to extrude this down pretty far, because that's going to go into the floor. And we want that to kind of look like clipping through the floor, basically. Probably don't need these because we want it to be smooth. Can bring this one down. All right, that looks good. So now, the reason why we did it like that is because I'm going to hit Shift-C to go back to center. I'm going to hit A to add a plane. Whoops. And then scale it really big. And now you can see we wanted it to be blobby enough to cut through the floor. You know, like have enough depth to cut through the floor, but still be rounded. So let's bring this down a bit. Now let's make our floor material. Now for this, I found a texture on CCO Textures, Paving Stones 046. So we're going to quickly set up that. And if you're unfamiliar, I'm sure you probably are, this is a great website for free PBR textures. So let's call this floor. I guess I should call it ground, but whatever. Already decided it's called floor. All right, so let's add our textures. So paving stones, we want the color, and that we will put into base color. We'll duplicate this node, and we will choose the normal map. We will create a normal node. Wait, that's not what I wanted. Normal map. Put this into normal. And I think this has to be non-color. And then we'll also do displacement. Now, this is going to be actually shaping the geometry. So if we go into wireframe, we don't have enough resolution yet. So if we go into our modifiers and put on a subdivision surface, I want this to be about like 8, but with simple on. And that might look like a lot, but it's for this paving stones to look right. That's pretty much what we need. Same thing during render. All right, and then we want a displacement node. Take the color of this, and this should be displacement, and that should actually go into height and non-color. And the value that I found that works best for this is 0.57. So let's go into rendered mode real quick. And what we should see, so I have to go into this material, and under the cycle settings displacement, we want to say displacement and bump. And that looks a little bit too strong. This should be 0.07. Perfect. So there's our stones. And so now when we go into our scene, you can see the ooze tracks. That looks awesome. too late to rotate the tube with the TGRI so it's facing up a little bit more, but too late for that. I mean, we could probably fix it, but I don't really care that much. So looking at the glass set up correctly, I feel like it's too reflective right now. What's going on with our glass? Glass tube. Transmission should be at 0. No, not right. Oh, alpha E. Another thing we want to do is make our glass actually have some thickness. So let's just go into solid here. And with the glass selected, we will add a thickness modifier. And you know what? We probably don't need the subdivision surface on the glass. Let's see if that just broke our texturing. Come on. Okay, TGRI still looks good. Because we want it to be kind of jagged. So let's add to this guy a solidify modifier. And in wireframe mode, with the ooze selected, I basically want to solidify the glass to go through the ooze. So let's the other direction so that the ooze is inside. And that looks good. So what did we use? We used -11. Let's do that on the other side. There we go. And how's that look rendered? Like the glass, kind of like in the Blender Guru beer tutorial. So you can see right here that these edge loops should probably just slide until they're underneath there. Same thing on this side. And let's see how that looks rendered. Because that is because it's copying the material. Let's actually apply these solidify modifiers. And then I'm going to take both of these glass pieces. Whoops. Okay, if I can select them. Go into isolation mode with the divide key. And if we go into material preview, what you'll see is the TGRI logo was actually copied onto that side. And technically, this is just a label on top of glass. So that is unrealistic. So I'm going to go and select all of these faces where the solidify was applied. Actually, I can just select edge loop like that. And then what we want to do is assign the glass tube material to those. I don't know why it's not letting me do that. Glass tube. There we go. And then probably the same thing on the inside. So because the solidify copied the texture to the inside, it's as if the label was actually on the inside, which is obviously incorrect. So let's just select all of these and assign glass tube. And probably those as well. So now the label texture is only on the outside, which is technically accurate. Whoops. Let's do the same thing for this guy. So I'm just going to select these face loops and then just press Control+ to get those last ones assigned glass. And now it just looks like glass all the way except to where the label starts. And I am pretty happy with that. solid. We should probably save. So let's go into take 2. Well, this is TGRI 2 V001. And now, I guess let's start framing our shot and trying to play with the volumetrics. So I'm going to go into front view, add a camera, Control 0 to go into that camera, and then Shift tilde to go into fly, which allows you to use WASD in the mouse to kind of move your camera around. And then you can also use E to go up. So I feel like this is probably pretty good. All right, so just a quick update. If you have been looking at the bottom of the screen, I've been putting a message up saying that RTX-Voice hates cycles. So my room is very noisy. It has an air conditioner as well as a desk fan because the summertime in New York City gets very hot and humid. So I've been recording these videos with RTX-Voice on, and it does a fabulous job of getting rid of the AC and the desk fan background noise. Unfortunately, it does use the GPU in order to process the noise removal. And I didn't realize until recording this video that using cycles, it appears to be using cycles with displacement textures, causes RTX-Voice to get super choppy. So that is unfortunate. Pretty much the rest of the video at this point wasn't too important, but almost all of the audio was not really salvageable. And since the rest of the video wasn't that important, rather than try to dub over it, I just figured, screw it, let's just go straight to the render. Basically, what you're going to miss out on is I use a couple noise nodes on the end caps to add some rust spots. If you're familiar with the noise nodes, nothing that you can't predict. I basically just add some brown spots randomly over the end caps, called it rust. I dialed up the intensity of the ooze glow, so it glows a little bit brighter. And I experimented with volumetric fog and to try to get some like kind of glowing light. And I'm not an expert on volumetrics at all. In fact, this is really the first time I've ever played with them, and the effect didn't come out too great. So like I said, this isn't actually a tutorial, so it's mostly just me making this prop. If you guys really want, I can record a separate video of me fixing all that stuff with proper audio to see how I got to the render, but I'm probably not going to do that, and it's not that important. I mean, if you got this far, at this point in the video, the model is made, the materials are set up. I mean, there's not really much missing. The ground is made, the camera angle has been set. Really, the only thing is just setting up a poor excuse at volumetrics that you're missing out on. So, without further ado, let's jump to the render. All right, and here is our render. I did actually render this a few more times. The brightness that I did for the background at 50 was way too high. Initially, we had it at 10. Then I did one at 50, one at 30, but they were definitely too high. You shouldn't be driving it. Even 20 is probably way too high for a background, but because that volumetric box is absorbing a lot of that light, this worked for the render, but I wouldn't recommend it. In fact, since I didn't really know what I was doing with the volumetrics, probably we didn't need that in the scene at all, but I'm happy with the height of these. The surface could probably be a lot better, but I think for now I'm going to call it and say that this is our render. Of course, you can play with these materials and see what you can come up with. The actual modeling is the most important part, and it's pretty easy to do. I showed you how to do the texturing, which also is pretty easy to do. But one thing that I really do like is how this kind of glows, like the ooze should, and it fills these cracks of this displaced texture. So this geometry is physically being displaced by its material, so it creates these bricks at different heights, and then the ooze kind of fills into those and looks really, really cool. So just for fun, this is the final render we did for the tutorial, but let's go look at the render that I did previously, if I can find it here. All right, and so this is what I rendered last time. As you can see, it's a lot different. I had the overall colors a lot darker. The ooze was definitely more towards the glass side because you can see through it. I did have that square in there to try to do the volumetrics, but as you can see, I got a little bit of volumetric light, not a lot of volumetric light. And then I think I had the capsule be a little bit wider in the initial render, but you know, those are all things that you can play with as you're doing your modeling. But overall, this one came out a lot flatter. And I really like the one that we did today. So this was my second try. Another difference you can see is I had my bend a lot more aggressive. So the gap here was open more. But when I look at the reference, you know, it's just barely rotated, even if at all, just like it's separated a little bit. You know, so I like how in this one, we rotated it a little bit, but not a lot. I feel like it looks better like this than with the more aggressive rotation, but that's up to you when you decide to do this. You can make it rotated however you like, but overall, I like where we landed, and that'll do it. So the only thing left is the social media. So let's hop over to my Twitter. Someone said, so this app for soft guy, he's previously said that he was making a theme for Blender 2.4 series using the 2.8 icons, and I kind of bugged him. I was like, when are you going to be done? I'm really excited for this. And he said, sorry for the delay, it's going slowly, but here's the progress. Icons covered by purple have already been completed. I'll notify you when it's complete. So basically this texture is all the icons for the Blender 2.4 series, and he's replaced all of these ones that are kind of purplish pink. So he still has these ones to go, but once he's done doing this, I guess he's already got the colors for the theme worked out, and it will basically look like Blender 2.8 in Blender 2.4, and I'm super excited for it. I can't wait to play with it. It's going to be very strange to play with that. And then these guys were talking about one of my earlier tweets. They're saying Greg deserves a respect for his technical knowledge to carry out getting Blender 1.0 to work. And then the last thing is someone actually followed my gumball machine tutorial, which I'm super hyped about. So here is the tutorial I was talking about, and this was one of the first things that I did on YouTube, and basically he followed it, and this is the first time I've seen anybody publicly share the results from one of my tutorials, and I'm super, well no, actually I saw the guy do the Lego thing, but this is for the first time I saw the gumball machine tutorial, and I'm super proud of him. He did a really good job. One of the comments that he said was, instead of using the image texture for the bump mapping on the faceplate, he actually redrew it or traced over it in, I guess, Illustrator or some vector program, and made the texture super clean. Now, if you look at my render, which is at the end of this video somewhere, is this the last video? Where are we? Oh, we're in part 1. Let's look at the finale here. So I actually just used a texture image here directly from a photograph. So it's not the best bump map, but you know, it worked. It was serviceable. So this is the render that I came out with, but he did a really good job, and I hope to see more people share their creations after they follow my tutorials. I also mentioned in a previous video that I am available for freelance work, so if you need anything, my website is gmiller.net. You can see an example of the professional 3D modeling I've done, including some animation. And of course, the last thing I have to mention is that I am running a GoFundMe. I want an iPaq Pocket PC. On my last video, we raised $10. Thank you to both of the guys who donated, but we still have a ways to go. And just in case you're curious, Blender for Pocket PC is a very rare version of mobile Blender that runs on one of these compact iPaq Pocket PCs. And so basically, I think it's Blender 2 point something that they got running on an iPaq. And you can use it with a little touchscreen stylus, and it has like a Blender looking keyboard, which I did get this working many years ago. I think this is something else. On a physical device, so I know it works, but I've tried using an emulator to get it to work, and I could not get it to work in an emulator. Don't know how to do that. These look like could be an emulator, but I think these are just screenshots. Yeah, so it says, GUIs for remote control, remote application control on mobile devices. So this is still running on a real device, and they're using a remote control application to be able to use it on, I guess, a desktop or something. But either way, I would need a real physical device to be able to play with Blender on a Pocket PC. And so I really want to show you guys this. And on eBay, they're about $50 with like all the accessories, and then there's an iPaq keyboard, which kind of folds out. And obviously Blender's all about keyboard shortcuts. And even though I love to torture myself with old versions of Blender for you guys, I still want to have a keyboard, because I think Blender would be pretty miserable with just a stylus and no keyboard. So I would like to get one of these keyboards, and I would like to get a Pocket PC so that I could actually run ancient Blender on a mobile Windows device. I think it is so cool. And so that's what this GoFundMe is for. On eBay, they're about, both the iPaq and the keyboard is around $80 to $90. So just, I set it to 100 so I could have a little bit of overhead for shipping and stuff like that, or if prices fluctuate or whatever. So yeah, link to this in the description. If at all you want to see me torture myself or do speed runs on this, just do it for the torture. Just I will probably do something crazy with this once I get it, like do a donut scene or try to do something epic, maybe even a speed run on this portable device. So if you want to see that, the GoFundMe is here. Link will be in the description. And that about does it for today. I'm really happy with this. This is the first series of movie props. And I hope you enjoyed. I hope to see your renders, and take care.